But everyone loves a good vacation, but there can always be some hassle, whether it's the long lines, delays, crowded spaces, you name it. When it comes to airport, don't take the fun out of it. So author and million miler Brandon Blewett is here with some do's and don'ts ahead of your next flight. So hopefully you can alleviate some of that stress.
Absolutely. It can be stressful, but it doesn't always have to be as stressful as we often make it, and people go viral.
Okay, I have to address the million miler.
Yes.
Obviously, you've flown a million miles, but how did you do it?
I've flown every week for work for 15 years, and there's also this app called Flighty that you have that it can detect how many delays you've had, how many hours and days you've spent on planes. It's kind of sick, but it's really fun to track.
Have you spent most of your life on a plane at this point?
Not most of my life, thankfully. Yeah, not there yet, but yeah.
Working on it.
In another 15 years, that may be the case. Yeah.
But that being said, like you said, you've been in the air for so many hours at this point, and you decided to write about that. Why?
I did. I laughed. There's either two things that can happen when you live on the road. You can go crazy, or you can have some cathartic, writing experience.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of both, as my friends and family would attest. But yeah, I put it in a book. Right.
So what exactly can people expect when they read this book?
So the book centers on the 6 habits of highly annoying travelers, which sounds a little bit curmudgeon-y, but I actually relate those travel habits to obstacles we face in our career journeys and what are the lessons that we can learn so we avoid them at the airport and in our career.
And that being said, when there are a lot of things that you encounter when you're at an airport, one of them we've seen in the news, long lines, a lot of delays. Yes. How do you try to circumvent them so that you don't get stressed out when you go?
I think part of it is use the airport's website. It will tell you what the TSA wait times are. And sometimes the terminal that is closest to your gate or the entry point isn't the one with the shortest line. So, if there's ways to maneuver around the airport, get as much information as you can beforehand. And I would say that generally speaking, that first flight out in the morning, the lines are going to be a little more manageable. They may still be long, but they're all going to be open because they know everybody has to catch that flight. Whereas if crews, are taking breaks, those can be some sneaky lines when you think it's otherwise going to be a quiet time at the airport.
Oh, so it's very much a know before you go.
Yes.
And you mentioned that the airline theory of people deciding what airline to choose is important. Explain that.
I think that when you look at which airlines have hubs in major cities, it's going to take away connection time, right? Yeah. And so if you use Google Flights, it may not be the same airline every time, but understanding if a fare is $15 less, but you have an hour connection somewhere,
it's worth paying the
right. It may be a little extra, right?
Overall, what's your biggest do's and don'ts suggestion when people are heading to a flight?
I think the biggest suggestion that I give, and I don't know if you've experienced this when you get off a plane, but as soon as the seatbelt sign goes off,
and everyone stands up
and puts their bag in the aisle.
Like, what are you doing? You can't get off yet anyway. They didn't even open the door.
If you want to stand up and stretch your legs, I have no issue. Yeah. But if you put your bag in the aisle, there's going to be people in front of you that their bag is further back, and all you're doing is delaying the deplaning process.
One of my biggest pet peeves. And finally, before we go, what is the best way to remain calm when we talk about layovers and the stress that can come with it? What do you suggest for people?
If you're above 21 or under 21?
Ooh, good question. Great follow-up.
Honestly, one of the things that I have done mentally, because I live at the airport, is instead of viewing it as a video game where everyone's an obstacle, view it as a movie, as a sitcom. Put some good, soundtrack in your ears and just relax. It used to be considered good people watching to go to the airport.
Yeah,
if we get back to that mental state, it'll probably be a lot less stressful.
I'm 100% with you. I like going to the airport bars and just talking to people too.
Exactly.
See, over 21, exactly. You can do that. Yeah. Well, where can we find you before we go?
On X and Instagram, on Brandon in the Air, and then my website is also brandonblewett.com.
All right, before your next flight, you're going to make sure you get that book, How to Avoid Strangers on an Airplane, so hopefully you can have a little more etiquette when you get there. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thanks for having me.